This plant is going to outgrow me. Hi, book friends. Welcome back to my channel, or just welcome if you are new here. My name is Lou, and this is Literaturely Lou, where we talk about fantasy and sci fi books. I haven't done a single video or short in the entire month of November, and there's a reason for that. I did No Screw November for the first time ever in hopes to write more. I have mentioned on this channel before that I am trying to write my first novel. I recognize that this video is really late, but life. Enjoy. I have written short stories in the past for myself. I have never attempted to take it from my laptop to the public world, but I have recently felt like I want to attempt to write something that more than just the select few members of my family and friends will see. So I did NaNoWriMo, but I didn't do it with NaNoWriMo. I just did it on my own using Scrivener, and I used the word count on top of the app in order to track what I was writing every day, which by the end of the month came to 13,918 words. I was so proud of that number. I'm still really proud of that number. I was just a little bit defeated when I came back and I saw that other creators had far exceeded that number, some even getting to 50,000 words, which is impressive. I was probably overthinking a lot of it, and it's fine. 13,000 is not a number to scoff at. So, of course, I haven't stopped writing just because November is over. I've continued to write, and I'm doing much better this month than I was last month. So we'll see what I get to at the end of December. It's an idea that has been in the works for a very long time. It definitely deserves to see the light of day. So I will offer more on that as I continue with it. I was also reading throughout the month of November. I didn't stop reading, and I received a book from Saga Press that I was very, very excited about. So we're going to do a review for it today. And that book is All That We See or Seem by Ken Liu. I am currently in the middle of reading the Dandelion Dynasty. I am in the middle of book two. That book is absolutely phenomenal, and it is hard to explain the reason why unless you yourself have read the book. But there is something between those pages that is absolutely addicting. And actually, because of the Dandelion Dynasty, I also have his book of short stories, The Paper Menagerie. I haven't cracked that one open just yet, but I've just been really excited to get into more of Ken Liu's writing. And now I can add All That We See or Seem to the list of books of his that I have read. Okay, now for the actual review. First, I want to say that Ken Liu is an incredibly skilled writer. What we find in the Dandelion Dynasty is what I think most authors aspire for: beautiful prose, great character work, the imagery, just everything. Everything is absolutely phenomenal. I could be speaking prematurely. Again, I am just in the middle of book two, but I feel confident, not just by my own experience, but by what other reviewers have said, that I am going to continue having a great time with that series. Some of those pillars that I found in the Dandelion Dynasty are seen again in this book as well, such as, because of the very descriptive writing, the imagery in All That We See or Seem is very definitive. This is a world in the very near future where advanced technology is very prominent in the everyday. Quick synopsis: we have a character named Julia Z, who is a hacker, who is also an introvert. She does not associate very much with the outside world, and she has her reasons for this. She's gotten by helping various people uncover various things using technology. However, the irony with her character is that she herself doesn't really trust technology, and I guess this is kind of her character quirk. When a dreamweaver named Ellie goes missing, her husband Pierce employs Julia Z's help to find his wife. We have this criminal syndicate that we suspect has some involvement in Ellie's disappearance. Then you get multiple perspectives, some with the criminal syndicate and then Julia and Pierce. With that being said, my issue with the book was just how much the technology took a front seat in the story. Did I think this book was bad? No. But I am almost convinced that it was created for a specific demographic, and I did not fall within said demographic. Ellie, being a dream weaver, she relies very heavily on AI. Julia Z, being who she is, also relies on AI. A lot of people at this time rely very heavily on AI. So it kind of felt like Ken Liu wanted us to see just how much impact AI really has on society at this time. And it was actually kind of terrifying, such as the ways that you can be identified, how privacy can be breached, how much AI can actually reflect who you are as an individual, to the point where you're essentially creating a copy of yourself, a copy that can think like you and speak like you. And when you think about that, there's something about that that's kind of terrifying. And while I was terrified, I was also impressed. The tech was cool. Unfortunately for me, that's about where it ends. I think because so much focus was placed on the technology, everything else took a back seat. We did get bits and pieces of Julia's background, but it didn't feel like enough to really get a feel for who she is as a character. It all just felt very surface level. And the same goes for Pierce. And that one probably frustrated me the most. Here we have a husband who is just undeniably devoted to his wife. He has essentially put her on a pedestal. You almost get this impression that his whole existence is just meant to serve her, which is great. But then you're asking yourself, why? Not to mention that the prologue of the story is a scene of Ellie not being abducted, not being kidnapped, but leaving of her own free will. This husband that she claims to love, this husband that loves her, she just leaves. And then as the story continues, there's speculation that it could be one thing or another, but nothing is definitive. And that was frustrating. Honestly, Ellie's character did not appeal to me. She came off as an individual who was a bit spoiled, had gotten everything that she wanted, and still found a way to not be content. And I really wish that this character had been given more depth or more layers so that I could love this character as much as Pierce did. When Julia chooses to partner with Pierce, I don't know that I really understood what motivated her to do that either. The main adversary here was a man named Prince. I didn't feel like we got a lot of his story, as well as the people that worked for him. So, character work across the board, there just wasn't a lot to latch onto. When it comes to the plot, I was also disappointed. I think the issue might have been the pacing. The pacing was a little bit wonky. A lot of these, high energy moments, I didn't find myself really wowed by any of them. And it was more like, oh, we're doing this now. That feeling of angst or suspense, I didn't really feel that. And then the book kind of lost me when our main conflict came to a resolution that I found anticlimactic. And then the book just shifts, and I don't feel like we get any closure on what we spent most of our time reading. And then the characters that I didn't care too much about were gone, but the characters that I really didn't care about became the focus. And then I was just kind of like, when is this going to be done? So there's that. I feel like Ken Liu wanted to go in a different direction and he wanted to challenge himself to write a different kind of story, maybe for a different community of readers. And I really appreciate that. I also learned after reading the book that he has a background in tech and maybe he kind of wanted to flex that muscle a little bit in his storytelling. And being that I don't have a background in tech, I can't really say whether or not he did this well. I do think that the technology in the book was cool, but I didn't read the book for the technology. I read it for a story, and the story for me was a bit lackluster. It's my understanding that this is going to be a series, but the plot in this book, however, wraps up pretty well. So I'm assuming that maybe in the next books, Julia Z is going to be, I don't know, fighting crime using her knowledge of technology, which sounds like a really cool concept to me. However, I don't know that I'm motivated to pick up the next book when it comes out unless reviewers that I trust explicitly say that it's worth my time, which isn't to say that I won't be reading more books by Ken Liu because I absolutely will. I ceased comparing this book to the Dandelion Dynasty when I realized that he was trying to take a completely different direction. So my feelings towards the other books, they still stand, and my feelings towards this author will absolutely still stand. And I'm still confident that if you like techno sci-fis, this book could work for you. Or if you have a background in technology, I think this book could also work for you. I think that is a demographic that this book was written for. I mentioned in a short that I have AI as a subsect in my personal curriculum. I got The Coming Wave by Mustafa Suleyman, forgive me if I'm saying that name wrong, which was recommended as a good place to start if you want to learn more about AI. And the two other subjects that I have as part of my personal curriculum, I have fiction to support that study. So while I have not yet read The Coming Wave, which I definitely want to read before I read any fiction containing the subject, I appreciated this book as a sci-fi that can give some insight on the topic of AI. I'm not trying to ramble on, but the connection I'm trying to make is just that if you understand the technology that is being discussed in this book, then you may have a better experience than I did. Now, I do have a spoiler that I need to get off of my chest, so if you have made it this far and you don't want this book to be spoiled for you, then I thank you for watching the video. You know to do all of the things, and I will see you in the next one. Happy reading. Has everyone gone? Is it just us now? Good. One thing that I do not like in storytelling that you can consider a pet peeve of mine is that if we have spent all of this time invested in the conflict that has been presented to us, then the resolution, right, the big crescendo at the end has to match all of the time spent leading up to it. I had spent most of this book trying to understand Ellie's character, trying to get a better grip on why she would leave this phenomenal husband of hers. And The fact that Ellie just dies almost immediately after finding her was probably what took me out of the story the most. I did not really care for Prince's character. I did not care for the guys that worked for him, whose name I can't even remember now. What is it, like Will and Sam or Duke, or I don't even know. I can't remember their names. They were forgettable to me. And quite frankly, so was the prince. I just feel like I can remember his name because it was not conventional. But I did care about Pierce, probably the most, because I so badly wanted to understand why he was so committed despite the dishonesty, all the secrets. His undying loyalty astonished me. And the fact that it just led to his demise, I just found it completely frustrating. I think the story tried to make up for it when the two lived forever in this digital space. And honestly, that's probably my biggest complaint with the book. I didn't think that it was terrible. I gave it 3.5 star. It's not the worst thing that I've ever read. I just don't know that it was for me. But if any of you guys watching this video also read this book, then let me know. What do you guys think?